And we're back. So next up on the list is Something Wicked This Way Comes. This one is from June of '98. Again, Century Media, 13 tracks, about a little over, clocks in a little over an hour long. This one I will also give a 5 out of 5. This one is a phenomenal album. This one is, it's cool because conceptually, this is where they start the the Something Wicked trilogy, which is something that there's a running current of it throughout many of the albums later on throughout the career of Iced Earth. They have a character set Abomine, which is kind of like their Eddie or their Murray or some of the other mascots that a lot of the bands have. That's set Abomine, and you'll see him on a lot of different album covers. Effectively, it's supposed to be the Antichrist, and in a lot of the albums, you kind of get the impression that uh, like they take a different approach to it, where most people would think the Antichrist is the villain in the story, where they kind of make it seem like humans bring it on themselves, but basically, he's there to destroy mankind and bring about the end of days. But this is as far as the band. Again, we're now deep into the Matt Barlow era of Iced Earth. John Schaefer on rhythms, James McDonough on bass. They bring in Larry Tarowski, I think I'm saying that right, on lead guitar, and Mark Prater on drums. This one, I'm not quite sure. Uh, like I said, there's lots of different, uh, there's all sorts of different reasons for the lineup changes and everything. You can probably look all those up on your own, but it is exhausting and exhaustive. And there's all sorts of different ones. Some are more notable than others, but we'll get into a couple of those when I took notes on one that was kind of funny, but we'll get into that once I get to it. And if I forget to do it, then I'm sorry. I forget which album it was, but it was they had one where the guy Richard Menser was supposed to be on the album, and he was supposed they put him on the album in the photos, and he, that was something that Century Media wanted, but he didn't do the recordings. And then they found out that he didn't even know the songs. He didn't practice any of the songs, didn't know any of them. So when you're gonna go take him out on tour, he knew nothing about the stuff he was supposed to be performing on. So they kicked him out of the band, and they got the guy who they were supposed to replace him with. So it was just kind of like a ridiculous situation. But Mark Prater, he's on drums. He went on to have a pretty solid career as an engineer at Morrisound Studios. A lot of these albums they were recorded at Morrisound. I should probably mention that. And through some of these albums, you'll hear a lot of guest and session work was done by Jim Morris. He did a bunch of guitar work on them, did a lot of background vocals on them. There's a ton of guest musicians who do stuff on Iced Earth albums. I can't, again, like with the lineup changes, I couldn't go. It'd take forever to go into all the people that have performed on an Iced Earth album, whether they be the cello player, which I think I made a note of. He's done a couple of their albums, but all the background singers and keyboardists and stuff like that. Again, you can look that stuff up on your own, but we're just for the sake of time and not to kill you all and beat you over the head with information. We're not going to go into all the list of people that have performed on a Nice Earth album. But yeah, this one is killer. Burning Times, Melancholy. Melancholy is one of my favorite songs they've ever done. Uh, Blessed Are You is phenomenal. The entire Something Wicked trilogy from it's just amazing. Even the stuff that's not like the strongest stuff on the album, like Reaping Stone's really good, Standalone's really good. Like the whole album's good. This one, again, 5 out of 5. I definitely recommend this one. I do consider, again, essential listening if you're going to get into Iced Earth is this one. And then they followed it up in June of 2001 with Horror Show. Now this is kind of a funny one. This is one of the more notable lineup changes. So Steve DiGiorgio, who everybody probably knows from Death and Testament and Sadist and a ton of other bands, he was in the band and he did the album. and he was supposed to go out on tour with Eister to tour the album, and then through his management, he told him that he couldn't do it. And John Schaefer got so pissed at him that he made him a guest. He credited him as a guest musician, even though you can clearly see that they took photos with him on the album. There he is in the center, and he was supposed to go out on tour with him and everything. And he got so pissed about that that he made him a guest musician and made him the last one on the list as far as people that got credited with performing on the album, which is kind of, just kind of a petty, just juvenile move. But it is what it is. Like I say, I think the more you go into the one thing you could say about Schaefer is that he's probably a bit of a hardhead and stubborn and a dick, and that'd be a whole other that's probably a whole other can of worms to open up as far as that goes. But the album itself is a concept album, another concept album. This one is all based on a bunch of old horror characters, particularly the Universal monster characters like werewolf, creature from the Black Lagoon, Dracula, uh, the Mummy. Just a lot of killer stuff. They do the Phantom of the Opera. As far as I think I'm missing a couple things here, but it's 11 tracks, 60 minutes long. Barlow, Schaefer, Tarnowski, Steve DiGiorgio, like I said. And then on this one, this is the debut of Richard Christie on the album. Richard Christie is, I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with. He's done a ton of work with a variety of bands. He worked for Acheron, Eister. I want to say Charred Walls of the Damned was another band he was in. And I know he was in a couple other bigger bands. I just off the top of my head, I can't think of. But he's a phenomenal drummer. And eventually he ended up leaving the band to go work for the Howard Stern show, which I thought was pretty wild. And actually, speaking of Asheron, I mentioned that in a correspondence with Vincent that I was like, that had to be pretty wild to have a guy in your band who eventually went on to go work for Howard Stern of all places. And say what you will about Howard now, but back in the day, he was like the it radio broadcaster. Probably him and Rush Limbaugh and maybe Don Imus. And I would say personally, I'm more of an Opie and Anthony guy as far as radio shock jock kind of people go. And we had Bubba Love Sponge down here in Tampa, but he was kind of like a lower tier guy. But as far as radio broadcasters, those are probably the dudes. And Howard Stern was definitely at the top. The king of all media thing is definitely not just hyperbole. I mean, he had his run. He also had, being in New York, you grow up, you listen to him and you see the show they used to have on Channel 9. I forget what the call letters were for it, but it was kind of funny. But anyhow, and he ended up going to work for him. But this album is phenomenal. Again, I'd have to say 5 out of 5 on this one. Damien is a phenomenal song. That's again one of my favorite songs that they've done. The Phantom Opera Ghost, that one it ebbs and it flows, and especially when they get into the part where they bring the female guest vocalist on and she's doing the part of Christine, and then the way they go from the acoustic parts that they have in it to going into like this real kind of fast thrashy kind of a little bit of a chuggy riff. It's top tier stuff in my opinion. Imhotep's a great one. Dracula. uh, the Ghost of Freedom's a good song. That's really not a horror themed. It's where you start inching into. They did one on Something Wicked, but you start kind of getting a little bit more of like Schaefer starts interweaving some of like his more like patriotic, uh, pro Americana themed songs into the albums, and this is one of them. It's a beautiful song. It's definitely really good. But as far as for the concept of the album, it stands out on its own, which is probably the intent. But again, killer album, horror show, another one that I would consider. Yeah, you should pick that one up. Then in October of 2002, they put out Tribute to the Gods. This one is a cover album. It had 11 tracks, 51, almost 52 minutes. Barlow, Schaefer, McDonough, Christie, Tarnowski. This we finally got a little bit of steadiness, a little bit of continuity to the band, and it's good. It's good, but it's not a nice dirt album. It's just a cover album, but it's really good. Dead Babies is a great song. Hearing them do Screaming for Vengeance is really cool. The two Blue Oyster Cult tracks that they do on it, Cities in Flame, Burn for You, they're really good. Hallowed Be Thy Name. I mean, this is the type of band, if you grew up listening to Iron Maiden, Priest, that sort of stuff, hearing them cover, particularly Matt Barlow doing the vocals, it's just they're tailor made for each other. So it was really cool hearing them do those songs. But Dead Babies is probably my favorite one, the Alice Cooper song. That one's killer. So again, another one that I would certainly I would tell people to pick up if you just want to hear a band that's really good, doing really good covers. That one's the one for you. So this was around the time in their history where Matt Barlow officially left the band. As I said, 9/11 happened. He was, I think, he was kind of like drifting between should I stay or should I go, wanting to, perform in some sort of public service to serve his country, which is certainly commendable and understandable. So finally he left, and then we ended up getting the Glorious Burden, and we got Tim Ripper Owens from Judas Priest fame. He got fired from Judas Priest when they got back together with Halford, and he ended up joining Iced Earth. And this one's another concept album. I believe they had fulfilled their obligations to Century Media, so they wound up on Steamhammer, which was a subsidiary of SPV. And this one is 11 tracks, 70 minutes long. Again, 4 out of 5. You got Tim Owens, Schaefer, McDonough, Christie. Uh, I forget who did the. I think this is one where they had a lot of guest musicians doing stuff, but Schaefer primarily did all the guitars. But it's a cool concept album. It's about the Civil War, and some people get their panties in a twist about this one. They kind of make it seem like Schaefer was taking the side of the Confederacy. I don't know. I think if you listen to some of the lyrics, you can kind of hear him talk about how I think it kind of, to me at least, the way I interpret it, is that it was such an awful, bloody war. Almost tore the country apart in its infancy, and like with Valley Forge, I believe the song is. It's kind of like one of those deals where it just you get this overwhelming sentiment that he just kind of feels like looks at modern society and hates it. I'm talking about Schaefer right now, and to look back and view it through the lens of history and people that would have fought in the Civil War and have it be such a bloody, awful ordeal, and then to think is like, oh, is this what we fought to protect or preserve? Was like some of the BS and nonsense that you see happening in modern society. I think that's kind of where the general concept of, or at least his mindset. I could be completely off the rails on that one, but that's just what I got from it. But as far as songs that were killer, besides that one, I mean, Gettysburg it's an ambitious effort that they did. It's a great song. I particularly like. Again, it's another trilogy that they did. I liked Hold at All Costs and High Watermark. Those are probably my two favorites in the two passages, if you will, or stanzas within the song, the one, two, and three. But Declaration Day is probably the best song on the album. It's cool because they start the album off with the Star Spangled Banner, and then just the mix on it is really cool because it goes right into near the end of the Star Spangled Banner. It goes right into that, and you get the drums and all that, and it's just cool. I'm not really a musician, but I love stuff like that. So that really, I enjoy stuff like that. But yeah, that's a killer one. I would definitely recommend it, and it's cool to have Tim Owens in the band. He brings a different style to it, different flair. He's got just as powerful of a voice as Barlow, so it's kind of a welcome addition, a fresh take on a lot of the stuff. But still, I'd say Matt Barlow is my favorite singer as far as any Eister singers go. He's probably the best one of the band. So yeah, then we go on to this is where we start getting into Schaefer decided he wanted to flesh out the something wicked concept with the with Set Abomine and the Times and all that sort of thing. So in I didn't write down the year. Well, screw it. We got Framing Armageddon. This one came out also on, I think, Steam Hammer. Yeah, this one was SPV Steam Hammer. You got Owens, Schaefer. This is the first album with Troy Seal and Dennis Hayes. Brent Smedley's on drums. I think actually going back, I think Brent Smedley he did the drums or he did the guest work on the drums, but he wasn't going to tour. There's some weird thing there on the last album, but I think he did the drums on it, but don't quote me on that. And then Jim Morris did some guest work on the guitars and vocals on it. It's 19 tracks. It's almost 70 minutes long. It's a long one, but it's really cool. Again, 4 out of 5 on this one. A Charge to Keep, The Setian Massacre, Order the Rose, When Stars Collide, all very killer songs. Again, you stick with the themes of very epic, grandiose songs, choruses. They're even, you start incorporating cellos into the mix and the keys and all that sort of stuff. It's good stuff. But then we're gonna move. Hopefully, you don't hear me turn the page too much here. But then we go into I I don't quite know the details behind it, but Tim Owens left the band and we got Matt Barlow back, which was really cool. And they did part 2 of Something Wicked, The Crucible of Man. And this one's a really, really, really good one. I gave it a 4 out of 5. Again on Steam Hammer, came out in September of 2008. The story is that they recorded all this stuff. They had it ready to go, and it was supposed to come out like a 1-2 shot, and that's not what happened. So they end up recording the stuff with Matt Barlow on vocals, and it's really good. It's 15 tracks. It's about an hour long. I would say it's the same band. I mean, there's still a little continuity with the band as far as the lineup goes, and overall, because it's with it being 15 minutes or 15, I should say 15 tracks long, it's not the strongest album in their catalog, but it's got some killer songs on here. I mean, Crucify the King, Come What May, those are two of my favorite songs of theirs. Just if you listen to Come What May and hear Barlow's vocals on it, it's just like it's amazing some of the notes that he can hit and just how the registers he can get on his vocals with the highs and everything like that. It's phenomenal. Crucify the King has just this heavy riff that it starts out with and it goes throughout the entire song. And a lot of the concept is again, it's taking you through the story of Set Abomine and his rise to power. Like on the first Something Wicked, you get the birth of the wicked and that sort of thing. And then this one kind of gets to the point where he's rising to power and all that sort of thing. And then Harbinger of Fate and I Walk Alone. Those are other very notable songs on this album. But this one's really good. I would definitely check this one out. It was cool to have Barlow back in the fold on the Eyster album. So yeah, so that was that one. Then we are gonna pause for a second because again, try not to have my storage killed on this one. So I will be back in just a quick second.